May 4th, 2007, a Friday evening in southwest Kansas.
This thing is huge. It has to be a mile across.
A town of 1,400 people. A tornado nearly 2 miles wide.
This is a very dangerous situation with a confirmed large tornado on the ground.
But what makes this night different from any other tornado disaster? Greensburg wasn't just destroyed. It was the first tornado in history to receive the highest rating on a brand new scale. The first EF5 ever recorded. To understand what happened that night and what rose from the ashes, we have to start at the beginning.
Talk to me!
The year 2007 began with a change. On February 1st, the National Weather Service retired the original Fujita scale and implemented the enhanced Fujita scale, a more precise system, more damage indicators, better wind speed estimates. Scientists hoped it would never need to rate anything at the top. 3 months later, that hope was shattered. But Greensburg's story begins long before the tornado. This small Kansas town had always been defined by something remarkable. In 1888, workers dug what would become the world's largest hand-dug well. 109 feet deep, 32 feet wide. A masterpiece of pioneer engineering that put Greensburg on the map. For over a century, the big well was the town's identity, its pride, its reason to exist. On May 4th, 2007, everything changed. How did it happen? It started like any other Friday in southwest Kansas. Temperatures climbed into the mid-80s. The atmosphere remained capped for most of the day. Residents went about their routines, unaware of what was brewing to the southwest. But meteorologists were watching. The Storm Prediction Center in Norman, Oklahoma, had issued a moderate risk for severe weather. They knew the ingredients were there. Moisture from the Gulf, a powerful upper-level trough moving in from the west, and a dry line extending into southwestern Kansas, sitting just west of Greensburg. The Storm Prediction Center issued Tornado Watch 227 for western and central Kansas. The watch area covered 29,000 square miles. The message was clear. Conditions were favorable for supercells and tornadoes. Still, for a town that had heard countless tornado watches before, this one didn't feel any different. Kansas averages 4.4 tornadoes per 100 square miles, more than almost any state in the nation. Warnings had become routine. Familiarity, unfortunately, can dull instincts. Supercells began developing near the Kansas-Oklahoma border, south and southeast of Dodge City. Over the next hour, these cells merged into one massive supercell near Highway 183. The first weak tornadic signature appeared on Doppler radar. The Greensburg storm was becoming tornadic. Storm spotters reported the first well-defined funnel clouds. Small tornadoes began touching down, dancing across the open fields of southern Kansas. They were short-lived, relatively small, but the storm was only warming up. The main tornado touched down in southern Kiowa County, south of Greensburg. It began moving north, and it began to grow.
100%. There is a tornado on the ground. Yes. Yep, it's there. 100%. Still on the ground. Cool.
The National Weather Service in Dodge City issued a tornado warning for Jasper and Kiowa counties. The lead time was 39 minutes before the tornado would impact Greensburg. Sirens began to wail across the town. A well-defined hook echo appeared on radar in southern Kiowa County. This was no ordinary storm signature. The rotational velocities within the supercell were exceeding 260 miles per hour. A severe weather statement was issued. Kiowa County was called for the second time. The tornado was massive and growing. Storm spotters reported a large and extremely dangerous tornado just 5 miles south of Greensburg. It was moving north at 20 miles per hour. Then came the words that would define this night. Meteorologist Mike Umscheid at the National Weather Service office in Dodge City made a decision. He issued a tornado emergency for Greensburg. The message read, "A violent tornado was on a direct path for portions of Greensburg." This is an emergency situation for Greensburg. It was only one of a handful of times a tornado emergency had ever been issued. The terminology was born during the May 3, 1999 outbreak that devastated Moore, Oklahoma. Now it was being used again, and the tornado heading for Greensburg was about to earn a rating that hadn't been given since that terrible day 8 years earlier. 9:45 p.m. The tornado entered the south side of Greensburg. By now, the funnel had reached its maximum width of 1.7 miles. The town itself was only about 1.5 miles wide at its widest point. There was no escape. The tornado was wider than the town it was about to consume. It didn't sound like a freight train. Survivors would later describe it differently. Drive down the highway at 205 miles per hour with the windows down and stick your head out. That's the sound. Raw, violent, inescapable. The tornado plowed directly through the heart of Greensburg. It followed Main Street like it had been given directions.
This tornado was located 5 miles from Greensburg, moving north at 20 miles per hour. A violent tornado was on a direct path.
Trees that had shaded the town for generations were stripped of every branch, every piece of bark. Some were snapped at the base, others were pulled from the ground entirely. Delmer Day Elementary School was leveled. A section of the building simply vanished. Greensburg High School was mostly destroyed, sustaining high-end EF4 damage. The Kiowa County Memorial Hospital was demolished. The Greensburg City Hall, the courthouse, the fire station, all gone. The Big Well, the town's beloved landmark, survived. The hand-dug shaft that had defined Greensburg for over a century remained intact, but the water tower above it was destroyed. The Palisite meteorite that had been displayed in the museum was found later, buried in rubble. Homes that had been securely bolted to their foundations were swept away completely. Ground scouring occurred where houses had stood. Vehicles were thrown hundreds of yards, twisted beyond recognition. For several minutes, the giant churned through Greensburg. When it finally exited the north side of town, 95% of the city was damaged or destroyed. The tornado continued north, eventually doing something remarkable. It made a complete loop before finally dissipating north of the yellow brick road at 10:05 p.m. In total, it had been on the ground for 65 minutes, carving a path 28.8 miles long. When dawn broke on May 5th, Greensburg looked like a bomb had exploded. Nothing was recognizable. The streets that had raised generations of families were now piles of brick, shredded metal, and scattered debris. 11 people lost their lives that night. Claude Hopkins, 79, Larry Hoskins, 51, Evelyn Kelly, 75, David Lyon, 48, Colleen Panzer, 77, Ron Rediger, 57, Harold Schmidt, 77, Sarah Tackett, 72, Beverly Volz, 52, Richard Fry, 62, and one more in a neighboring county. Some were found in basements that had been filled with a tremendous amount of debris. Even the safest places in a home offered no guarantee against a tornado of this magnitude. 63 more were injured. Some were transferred to hospitals in Dodge City, Pratt, Kinsley, and Wichita. The Pratt Regional Medical Center received 59 patients alone. Hours after the tornado hit, Greensburg was judged unsafe and fully evacuated. The Kansas National Guard was called in to secure the area. A dusk-to-dawn curfew was implemented. Looting was reported in the days that followed. The damage surveys began immediately. When the National Weather Service assessed the destruction, the conclusion was historic. Winds were estimated at 205 miles per hour.
This fork here is stuck in the tree.
The first EF5 tornado ever recorded since the enhanced Fujita scale was implemented just 3 months earlier. The first tornado to earn the highest rating since the Bridge Creek Moore tornado of May 3, 1999. The last F5 or EF5 to strike Kansas since the Andover tornado of April 26, 1991. Meteorologist Howard Bluestein would later describe it as likely the most intense since the tornado that struck Oklahoma City and Moore, Oklahoma, on May 3, 1999. 961 homes and businesses were destroyed. 216 received major damage. 307 received minor damage. Total losses exceeded $250 million. Around 800,000 cubic yards of debris had to be removed from Greensburg in the months that followed. That's roughly 75,000 to 80,000 truckloads. But no number can account for the price of a life. 11 chairs sat empty at family tables. 11 voices were forever silenced. And yet, because of the warnings, because of the tornado emergency, because sirens sounded 20 minutes before impact, countless lives were spared. The death toll could have been catastrophic. Instead, it was contained by the efforts of meteorologists, emergency managers, and media broadcasters who screamed for people to take cover. Dave Freeman at KSN was credited by survivors with saving their lives. His live coverage convinced people to seek shelter who might otherwise have ignored the warnings. He was later named the National Weather Association's Broadcaster of the Year for 2008. Within days of the tornado, something remarkable began to happen. Instead of accepting defeat, Greensburg chose to fight. Kansas Governor Kathleen Sebelius toured the devastation and saw not just destruction, but opportunity. Why rebuild to 1950 standards when you can rebuild for the 21st century? She asked. The idea took hold. If Greensburg had to start from scratch, why not build something unprecedented? Why not become the greenest city in America? In December 2007, the Greensburg City Council passed a resolution requiring all city buildings to be built to LEED Platinum standards, the highest certification level for energy efficiency and environmental design. It was the first city in the nation to do so. President George W. Bush visited Greensburg on May 9, 2007, just 5 days after the tornado.
My mission is today though, is to lift people's spirits as best as I possibly can. Is to hopefully touch somebody's soul.
He returned a year later to speak at the high school graduation ceremony.
Distinguished guests, family, friends, and most importantly, the class of 2008.
Federal funding poured in. FEMA ordered trailers to house the displaced. Over $100 million in federal assistance was provided for emergency response, temporary housing, and rebuilding infrastructure. But the most extraordinary part of Greensburg's recovery wasn't the money. It was the vision. Today, Greensburg stands as a model green town, often described as the greenest in America. The hospital, city hall, and school have all been built to LEED Platinum certification. The first LEED Platinum Critical Access Hospital in the United States opened its doors in Greensburg. The first residential LEED Platinum building in Kansas was constructed here. A wind farm with 10 1.25 megawatt turbines now supplies the city with 100% renewable energy. The same Kansas wind that destroyed Greensburg now powers it. The city became the first in the United States to use all LED streetlights. Low-flow fixtures and native plantings conserve every drop of water. Rainwater is collected for irrigation. Single-stream curbside recycling became standard. And the big well? It was rebuilt. A new museum opened on May 26, 2012, featuring exhibits that showcase both the town's pioneer history and its devastating tornado. Visitors can descend stairs to near the bottom of the well and climb to an observation deck with a 360-degree view of the reborn town. The Palisite meteorite, half iron and half stone, is on display once again. But the story of Greensburg is not without shadows. The population has declined. Before the tornado, about 1,400 people called Greensburg home. By 2010, that number had dropped by half. Today, fewer than 800 residents remain. The tornado took nearly everything from Greensburg. It took 11 lives. It took 95% of the buildings. It took a century of history and scattered it across the plains. But it couldn't take the spirit of the people who chose to stay. Greensburg was the first EF5 on a new scale. It became the first green city of its kind. Every storm eventually ends, but what we build in its wake can last forever. Take care of one another.